Hey, how's everybody doing out there? I'm going to do a little how-to video explaining how to remove the crank pulley and the crank hub found on the Chevy LT1, or I should say General Motors LT1, since it was also used by Buick and Pontiac, and a whole bunch of vehicles had this particular setup back then. I think they made them from 92 through 97 or 98. Anyhow, this motor I pulled out of a Chevy Impala SS that had a severely bad rod knock, and as you can see why. So what's left of a lot of the bearing material, it looks like glitter all throughout the entire motor. So the customer didn't want to rebuild this block, and he just wanted me to find a clean donor motor just to swap all his stuff over and drop it in the car, and off down the road he went, which I did. I discovered in the process of doing so that when I put all the bracketry on the Camaro motor, which was the donor motor, that the brackets and everything that came off the Impala didn't line up with the crank pulley, because the crank pulley, or not the crank pulley itself, but the crank hub is actually shorter on the Camaros than the Impalas. So that led to me having to pull all the, the water pump off, and the OptiSpark, and so I was at it. I decided to do a bunch of the, take off the timing cover, replace the gaskets. The chain looked okay, so I was just at that point, and he was like, "I need the car back. I got to drive it." So, and it was just supposed to be a straight drop-in swap, which, of course, it didn't turn out to be that. But anyhow, it led to me making this cool video for you guys. So if you run into this problem on your own vehicle or your buddy's vehicle, you can watch this video and say, "Hey, that's easy enough to do. We can do that ourselves." And you don't have to take it to a shop and have pay somebody a bunch of money to do it. And you don't have to buy a big fancy tool to do it either. You can do this on the cheap, thanks to some information I found on some of the LT1 forums. And guys work on them all the time, so they find little tricks and make up their own tools to get around having to buy the real expensive tools that they probably won't use very often. So in a second here, I'm going to turn the camera around, put it on the workbench, and you can see all the tools that I used to complete this job. This will probably be a two-part video, saying how it's going to be a process of removing this and then removing the crank hub, and then I'm going to show you how to press the crank hub back on. So that'll probably be the second part. I don't think I'll have enough time to do it all in one, so we'll see. Anyhow, I'm going to cut the camera off here. I'm going to turn it around, put it over there, and set up on the workbench, and show you the tools that I used to complete this project. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Most of the guys at home can do this, fairly easy in a couple hours, depending on how hard or how much rust is in here. Sometimes if you live up north, this area, since the road salts and the wet and coldness all the time, in that climate, you'll get a lot of rust in there. So I'd suggest if you do live in those climates where the vehicle spent years in those kind of climates and this hasn't been off that you know of, I would get some good penetrating oil and just soak this area in here. Everywhere you can get it, just soak it for a day or two. Just keep spraying it on there, let it soak and sit, and it should pop right out. Anyhow, like I said before, shoot over to the workbench, and you can see the tools I used to complete this project. Alright, we're over here at the workbench. Got tools laid out nicely so you can see what you're going to need to do this job. So start out with the basic stuff that most people have. We got a 1/2-inch drive ratchet, 1/2-inch breaker bar. You're going to need a 9/16 deep well socket, 5/8 deep well, and you're going to need a 9/16 and 5/8 in your standard socket, and 11/16 wrench. You're going to need a 6-inch 3-jaw puller. That can be rented at most of your parts stores, or you can buy one yourself at the parts stores, or some tool places will carry that. As the same goes with this guy, harmonic balancer puller. If you don't have one, you can rent that at the parts store as well. You're going to need some hardware. We're going to need, let's see, they were 3/8 by 16 bolts at 4.5 inches. I didn't have the right size bolt to go into the crank pulley,
these would just go through the holes, and then you just put the bolts and maybe some washers on the back side, and then just tighten it up, and it'll pull it off just the same way. Instead of pulling on the threads, it'll just pull on these nuts on the back side of it, and it'll come right off. You're also going to need a bolt here that's 4 inches long. I'm not sure the size of it, but it needs to be a smaller diameter than the crank bolt you're going to pull out. And you're going to use this to slide into the end of the crank. It's going to push on the crank, and you're going to put your socket on there, and your balance, your puller tool will go on the back of that and push on that, and this will push on the crank, and then that turn will lift the hub up and off, or press it or pull it off. And this is what you're going to use to press it back on. Now this is a 7/16 by 20 threaded rod in grade 5. They recommended a grade 8 online. Unfortunately, I was not able to find a grade 8 locally, but Fastenal did have a grade 5. It came in a 3-foot length for $9.99. So you only need about a foot of it, but you can only buy 3 feet. So about 3 feet, cut it down to 1 foot. I put some tape on the end of it because it can be kind of sharp, and if you're working around it, you might tear open your arm or hand. So I might just weld a nut on it if I use it again. But besides the threaded rod, you're going to need 5 washers that are 3/4 inch, 7/16 by 20. Well, 7/16 washer. I'm saying. Sorry, 7/16 washers. You're going to need a nut, obviously 7/16 by 20 to fit that, so you can use that. So that's going to ride on that and push on that. You're going to need some of this anti-seize lube, and you're going to cover this really well so it's nice and smooth and has a fluid movement, and nothing binds up, so you don't break anything or cause any kind of damage. You don't want to do that. And also get yourself some disposable gloves, because if you've ever worked around this stuff, it gets, you see that? I just touched it, it's all over the place. It'll get on every damn thing around you. So yeah, get some gloves to throw away, because that stuff's messy. But that's it, pretty much. All the tools you're going to need to complete the job. Like I said, those two you can rent. That you can buy for, that was probably not even 15 bucks, maybe, yeah, just between 10 and 15 bucks for that. And I think that's a few bucks for that. And then that was just an old leftover bolt that probably had, I think it's from a water pump or something. But like I said, you can use any bolt as long as it's 4 inches and it's smaller diameter than the crank pulley bolt. And then you're going to want to grind down the threads so they don't catch on the threads in the crank. You don't want to damage those at all, because if you do, you're going to have a real bad day. So yeah, all right, that's it for that. It's pretty simple. I'm going to get the camera turned back around, and I'm going to go and pull off the pulley, and then I'll pull up the crank hub. All right, next step in, or I should say the first step in the process of doing this job is going to be getting this crank pulley off. First you're going to want to do is take these 3 bolts out here. I don't have them anymore. I think they're probably in a bolts bin or somewhere in the shop. Anyhow, I think those also were 5/8 socket, 5/8 bolts. And you're going to take your 5/8 socket, you're going to stick it in on the crank bolt. Then you're going to stick the head of the this 3-jaw puller. It's got a little point on it. You're going to stick it right in the 3/8 drive hole, and center it up, get it nice and tight, and set this up. I did it before I started the video, because this is kind of takes a little bit of time to set up, and trying to save time in the video. So anyhow, make sure that these 3 jaws are on the crank pulley itself and not on the hub. I can't stress that enough, because the hub bolt is still into the crank, and you're going to be trying to, if you get on the actual hub and you're trying to pull, you're just going to be yanking on the crank. That didn't sound right. Anyhow, so make sure you got your 3 bolts out, you got your socket on there, 5/8 socket on the crank bolt, and you got this lined up and started. And, make sure you're grabbing on the crank pulley, not the crank hub, and you grab your wrench here and just tighten it. This one will come off really easy since it's been off before recently. And yours may not be as easy if it's been on there for many years, or if you live in somewhere where there's a lot of salts and cold, very cold winters. So you're going to want to, like I mentioned before, put some penetrating oil on that, let it sit for a few days, or you may need to get some heat on there and heat it up so
get rid of the corrosion. That came off real easy, as you can see. And I'll take that and set that aside. Okay, next, you got the crank hub here. Now you notice here I've got these little marks here. I'm just to demonstrate this or show you. There's a little point, and that point lines up the 12 o'clock mark, which makes the number 1 cylinder say it's at top dead center. What you're going to want to do, if you're not taking off the cover, I believe there's a little mark that goes straight down, and that'll tell you when that's lined up. If this was put back on the right way, it'll tell you you're at top dead center. Or you can pull the spark plug out, put your finger on it, have somebody crank the motor over, or just take a ratchet or a breaker bar and roll the motor over by hand. And when you feel the pressure on your finger and it goes and it stops, then you're at top dead center, number 1, which will be the first cylinder on the driver's side. All right, enough of that. The next step is put that out of there because I have this here, and you're going to need a 5/8 breaker, and also this is going to break a lot easier because, like I said before, it's been off. This is going to want to turn. The crank's going to want to turn the whole motor over. So what you're going to need to do is probably run a bolt through there and a chain. So somewhere over here it's a fixed part of the car, something in the suspension, or like a sway bar. I think is what I used. I can't remember. I did this job probably about 6-7 months ago. But you could do this step before you do remove the pulley. But anyhow, this has got to come out. So you're gonna have to find a way to keep the motor from spinning over. Keep like 2 bolts there with a piece of chain, and then round something and bolt it to there. That way you can make sure the motor doesn't rotate as you try to get this, because this bolt can be hard to get out. And I wouldn't suggest using impact guns on these. My guys do. You can, but I suggest just doing it this way and muscle it out with a breaker bar and some chain. Anyhow, get your crank bolt out, which was a 5/8 headed bolt, and as I mentioned before, but the thinner bolt, you can see a focus there. You can kind of see the difference in the diameter. So, like I said, make sure you shave those down so they don't grab any of the threads in the crank, because if you damage those, it's not a good thing. You're gonna have a really bad day. Right, stick that bolt in there, and the next step is you're gonna get your harmonic balancer puller and get that set up. You can get the it's not a 5/8. I'm sorry. That one is a, it depends on what your bolt, but this one happens to be a 9/16, which probably will be I think there was a water pump bolt or drive accessory bolt from the donor motor or something I had in the bolts bin or some other engine or something in time I worked on long ago. And then you're going to take these bolts and run them through the 3 holes that mount the crank pulley to, and then you're going to run these nuts on the back side, and like so. And again, you're going to want to make sure this is nice and dead straight, because this is pressed on. It has to be pulled off perfectly straight and also pressed back on perfectly straight. So take your time, don't rush through it, because you don't want to damage anything, and that's not straight. So let's adjust it. Let's try that again. Again, this also will come off much easier, obviously, because it's been off recently. So adjusting them so you find the right. There you go. That should do it. Okay. Next, this is nice. Okay. And next, do is get your this one's a 9/16 drive, so or socket. So then you're just gonna go like this, and you're gonna turn it and you're going to turn it. You just keep turning it. You can already see it start to move. Oops. Trying to watch the camera and wrench at the same time. It's kind of hard to do. It's also kind of hard to make these videos. I just got started doing these, and it's a little different when you're trying to work and film and explain what you're doing at the same time. So you go back and watch the tape and say, oh, did I say that? And you say, oh, that's, you catch yourself saying the wrong thing. So give me a break, guys. I'm new at these videos. The more I do them, the better I'll get. I promise. Like, with anything, practice makes perfect. All right, got the crank hub off. That was as simple as that. Didn't take anything, special really to do it. No really fancy, expensive tools. So that's all done. And that's it. Now you notice that in the crank hub, there's no woodruff key, or there's no keyway for a woodruff key. Most cranks, a lot of cranks will have that. There is a cutout for a woodruff key on the crank itself, but there's no keyway for it to slide in on this. So that's why I say about having that mark there. Just make a little mark somewhere, so when you put it back together, it all goes back in the same spot as you took it apart. Which would be something like that. It's a little hard to see because the motor's a little cocked to the side a little bit, but anyhow, yeah, just make sure to get that mark like 12 o'clock, about where it's supposed to be. There should be a little sign there, or a little mark on the timing cover. If not, just try to get it dead straight. You can always pull out the spark plug, roll it over to the top dead number one cylinder, and that'll be perfect for you. Okay, well, that's the end of that step. Now it's on to part 2. So I'm gonna cut the video up here and get set up to put that crank hub back on. All right, this will be part 2 of the LT1 crank hub removal, and then pressing it back on. As you see, I've got my crank hub pretty much centered up where I want it, and get it, under with my hand, just tap it on there. Don't beat it with a hammer, because if you hit that center part right here, you'll mushroom it, and you'll have to get a new crank hub. And you shouldn't be beating on the front of the crank anyways, because your thrust bearings, they won't like that very much. So anyhow, like I said, get yourself a disposable glove. As you can see, this is the anti-seize will go all over the place. Okay. Anyhow, take the threaded rod and you just very gently put it in there, and you just keep tightening it till feel it bottom out pretty much on there. And you're going to want to make sure that these washers are dead center straight. Line them up. Should wear 2 gloves, but anyhow, too late for that. All right, and you got that looks pretty good. All right, next step. Where's the wrench? There it is. All right, we'll do that real quick. All right, now, and keep in mind this end. Put some tape on it, because it will be sharp from the cut. And if you're going like this, you might take your arm out on that. You could probably make this a little bit shorter. I just cut it at a foot, and actually, you do that, you could weld a nut on that end of it. But anyhow, here we go. I'm just gonna turn the wrench around, and it's going right on. You might want to, when you have it off, clean the surface and make sure it's real smooth. Like I said, it's press fit, so it's got to be perfect and straight. Almost there. And that should be about it. I don't have the timing cover on. I'm tearing this motor down anyways, but figured I'd make this video. Hopefully it'll help somebody out there. And that's it. It's pressed on. Now all you gotta do is back off the nut there. should be good enough, and unthread the rod. Some fine threads. That's it. All right, that's it. It's on. And take your crank hub, which I still have the 3-jaw puller on it, but I don't think I need to really go into too much detail about how to put this back on. What you're going to want to do is maybe clean the surface up. You may want to inspect it, make sure that this rubber around here is in good shape. This one in particular is not. It's all cracked. That's why I didn't use it. Clean up this edge right here, because that's also press fit. Make sure it's nice and clean and no rust in there. Same thing, just like light sandpaper in there. And just clean it up, make it nice and smooth. And you just fit that back on there, and you just run your bolts in and tighten it up that way. You don't really need to press that back on. Don't use an impact gun if you don't really have to. I wouldn't on a crank. I try not to. Anyhow, that's it. That'll be the end of part 2 of the LT1, how to remove the crank hub and the crank pulley, and then replace the crank hub, or I should say press it back on. Simple as that. Easy job. Probably took me maybe a half hour. Of course, I didn't have to take all this off, but this is all pretty, easy stuff too. It's just nuts and bolts and things. There's plenty of videos on how to do the OptiSpark out there. I didn't really see any videos of how to do this, so I decided I'd make one. Hopefully it helps somebody out there. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up and like it. If you want to see more videos like this from me, please subscribe to my channel. Like I said, I'm just starting out. This whole making videos is new to me, so I'll be doing how-to videos. Some of the stuff I'm just working on in the shop, I think that if somebody might think is interesting, they can follow the projects. I do a lot of car shows, so I'll do some footage of some of the shows around here. There's a racetrack right up the road from the shop here, and where I live, it's about 10 minutes away ish. So I'll be going out there. I'll do some footage of some drift events, drag racing, car shows out there. Anything automotive, and maybe some things that aren't automotive, but for the most part it'll be all strictly car stuff. Anyhow, that'll be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and take it easy. Catch you in the next one.